All right, here we are at the bottom half of Terry Ann's Courage Hour that I get to host with you. And we're in the mastermind section. And earlier we were talking a little bit about like who we are and knowing who we're meant to be and that kind of thing. And I found this quote that has grow in there because that's my theme, my focus, and courage is the topic of the month and the topic of this specific hour. So this quote is, "It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are." And I thought, how simple and how deep, because the courage, so it takes courage to grow up and to become who you really are. And instantly it took me to Peter Pan. Like I thought about Peter Pan and how he never wanted to grow up and he wanted to stay the same. And like growth is the opposite of that, right? Like if we want to stay the same, then we're not growing. If we want to grow, then we must transform. We cannot stay the same. We need to transition. So it takes courage to take steps in a different direction or pick up something and look at that you thought maybe was scary before to look at or question. And it really like, so the second part of become who you really are, right? Like now let's think about how that is for ourselves, like as the person that we are inside, trusting who we are and having courage to move in the right direction that is for each one of us individually. And growing up, well, I mean, I don't think I'm ever growing up. I'm constantly growing, but I'll never be grown up. So I think that it's always a transition and a becoming. But I love that it says becoming who you really are, because we never arrive. We are, as long as you have a growth mindset and you're looking for the opportunity to take in more or learn more, that difference is that you're taking the steps, and I think that's action. So it takes courage to grow up and to become who you really are. Foxy, do you believe that you are growing up to become who you really are?
I definitely think that. I mean, there's people that I meet all the time and I'm like, oh, I want to be more like that when I grow up. And so those are things to aspire to, right? Those are skills that I can learn. Those are, things I can attain, and I think that we're always learning, we're always growing. And if we're not, then that's kind of sad. That's like stagnant. That's like, like when you think of of stagnant water, it's gross, right? And I'd rather be like a stream or the ocean, where it's always moving, it's always changing, it's never the same. And so, I think that growing up, kind of has this almost a negative aspect to it, where like, oh, you grow up and you be serious or you take on more responsibilities, right, or whatever. And, like the whole term adulting, right? Yeah. But we can always be silly and we can always have fun and we can always be curious and we can look through the eyes of a child. And I think that we learn more when we do that. I think
for sure
we grow more when we do that. And it's when we feel like we have to be all serious and work hard and pay the bills, that's when life gets no fun. That's when it gets to be right, where we're just surviving instead of thriving. That's when
there's a balance between those two things. I think like
Yeah.
being able to get in that childlike state to have fun and see the joy, and also, you know, doing the things that we need to when as adults, as people that lead other people. Like, we definitely have to take action, do things, but I think it is that balance that, you know, we need to incorporate the fun things and the meaningful things and the hard things, because that is growth. It is being able to um not just learn the things, but then the transformation from implementing them and continuing to have courage to keep checking it out, to keep seeing what else is there.
Yeah. I mean, children do hard things and they're very
Yeah.
resilient, you know? They can get over things easy and they can adjust and they can change and they can adapt easily. And I think that those are things that we forget. They can be very fearless. And it's as we grow up that we can take on these stories and these lies of fear, and we don't try and we aren't fearless.
Mhm.
And it's remembering who we were when we were young, you know,
Yeah.
that makes us, you know, want to be more like that. I mean, I wish I was
Yeah.
more like my younger self in the
Well,
sense of fearlessness and how I
yeah,
thought of myself, you know.
right. And we're at time, but even just think that just made me think and picture the exact image that Susie very intentionally chose for the theme of courage, is a bunch of kids in superhero costumes with their fists up in the air, and you can't see their faces, you just see their capes and their costumes. And the theme of courage is exactly what we were just discussing. That's exactly what I just pictured, is ourselves as courageous children to, you know that anything's possible and be in that belief zone more, in that magic space. So we are at the top. We're going to pause here, and that was the end of the Courage Hour. So we will see you next week.